What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Wing and Tail Outdoors. As you can see, I'm coming to you from the road today. It's August 23rd, about 7:30 in the morning, and I'm finally headed up to the property to get our fall food plots taken care of. As I mentioned in the last video, the weather has really dried up over the last few weeks. We haven't really gotten too much steady rain, and our forecast shows 3 days of quality rain coming up, so the time has come to get it done. On the list of things that we need to do today, in this order, I need to drop our fertilizer, I need to drop our seed, I need to crimp over the top of that using a foot crimper, which we're going to talk about a little later in this video. And then we're going to spray Whitetail Institute's Impact over the top of that. Impact is a liquid pH enhancer, and again, we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the video. So without further ado, let's get to it. I'm standing here at the Powerline field now, and on your screen right about now you should be getting kind of like an update video of what this food plot looks like now. We planted again on June 12th. I don't have off the top of my head how long that's been, but it's August 23rd now, so June, July, August. So we're at about 70-ish days, 75 days, and this looks great, and honestly it hasn't even reached the point where it would reach full maturity. So this field could have still gotten better, but with hunting season coming around, we want to make sure that we have that fresh vegetation, the fresh food plots coming up, and it'll be more attractive to the deer. Essentially what we're doing today is we're going in and first dropping fertilizer. That's the first thing we want to do. After we drop the fertilizer, we're going to come right behind and we're going to drop the seed into the field. Right after we drop the seed, before I even leave the field, what I want to do is I'm going to crimp this over with a foot crimper that I made today before even going to another field. And the reason I want to do that right away is so that way there's as little time as possible for birds, turkey, other animals to come on in and get to that seed before we crimp it over. So I'm thinking that the faster I crimp after putting the seed down, the more seed will stay where I put it. And then after I'm done crimping everything, I'm going to go back to the cabin. I'm going to get our boom sprayer, set it up on the machine, and I'm going to spray Whitetail Institute's Impact on this field here, well, on all the fields. And as I said earlier, the Impact is a chemical that is intended to correct the pH level. Now, it's important to note before I get started that Impact is intended to be put directly on the soil. And as you can see, there is pretty much no bare soil in this entire field. So what I'm going to do is after I crimp it, I'm going to spray the Impact over the top of that. I know not a lot of it is going to get to the soil, and that's okay. Because what I think is going to happen, again, I'm no scientist, but here's what I would imagine would happen. Same way with nutrients, our plants absorb the nutrients, use what they can. When they die and decay, they put those nutrients back into the soil. So what I think is going to happen is whatever chemical or nutrient that is in that Impact that adjusts the level of the pH, I have a feeling that the plants are going to absorb it. These plants now are going to absorb it before they completely die, and then as they decay, they're going to release the Impact back into the soil. So while it may not give us much of a benefit now, I have a feeling it's going to be a huge benefit come spring and fall next year as that stuff is slowly fertilizing. So with that being said, let's transition. I'm going to go ahead and get all my stuff together. I'm going to show you a little bit of what we're using today, and then I'm going to get to work. First things first, we have our Kubota. It is a model RTV X1140. It is their diesel model, and it is the model that they claim is the best for working with, and it hasn't disappointed so far. It's able to pull the disc, it's able to mount the boom sprayer that we use. We have a couple spreaders that I'm not a fan of, but we have them if we need to, and this thing's a workhorse, so without it we'd have a little bit more work to do, if you will. Second, I have just a basic red bag spreader that we're going to be using to spread the fertilizer and the seed today. And I have just a cheap Amazon scale. And you want to make sure that it can do ounces as well. Okay, so this max weight for this scale is 50 pounds, which is more than enough. and it has 1/10 ounce increments. So you can really get down to fine tuning the weight of whatever it is that you're putting out. Lastly, there's an awesome online tool, and they're associated or affiliated with Whitetail Institute. You can find this product on their website, or the link to get to the website through the Whitetail Institute website. The website is called Plot Perfection. It is an interactive platform for you to kind of keep track and manage your food plots and your food plotting needs. What it helps you to do is to calculate how much fertilizer you need, how much seed you need. If you choose to use spray fertilizer, it will help you calculate how much of that spray that you need to put out. And it kind of keeps everything organized. So I really enjoy using it. If you buy your soil samples through Whitetail Institute, you will actually, the company that you send your soil samples to will automatically upload that information into your profile on Plot Perfection the moment that they finish with the results, the moment they get those results. So it's a really great website. I believe that there's an annual fee to use it, but honestly it is worth its weight in gold. And I just want to say that I am not personally affiliated with anyone. I don't get paid to speak on any one product. You're going to see me using products from a whole bunch of different people throughout these videos. So I just want to share the knowledge and the information that I have, and the products that I use, and what worked well and what didn't, and hopefully I can help you guys all make the right decision as you're purchasing your materials. With that being said, let's get to work. Alright, so this year, for all of our food plots, we're using Whitetail Institute products. We're planting No Plow and Destination combined together. So I'm mixing them together in my spreader, then I mix the seed together, and I just go out and I plant it. Together, I believe there's about 13 different species of forage in here. Not every one of them grows every time based on the conditions or whatnot, but that's one of the benefits of planting a mixture, is that there's going to be something that's going to grow. There aren't that many things that I noticed didn't grow. I mean, our radishes grew, our clovers grew, our triticale grew, our rye grew very nicely, the buckwheat grew, a lot of the other stuff grew. I can't remember everything off the top of my head. But one of the things I'm pretty sure didn't grow this year is the phacelia. Not quite sure why. I do want to look into that and see if maybe we could kind of fix that for next season. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour these. In at the proper weights, and we're going to get to spreading. So we've just gone ahead and finished spreading the seed. As I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you have that spreader kind of angled up in the air a little bit and allow gravity to help those seeds get down to the soil. One last thing I forgot to point out before is as you're going, you want to try to spread a little bit at a time. Less is better in a sense, and I'm going to tell you why. Because as you're walking, you don't want to just walk one direction, right? So down, then back, then down, then back. What you want to try to do is walk a couple times back and forth, long ways across your field, and then walk the short way up and down. And ideally, what I would like to do, I ran out of seed, is at the end, I like to kind of do an X through my field as well. And that helps ensure that the seed has the best chances of reaching the soil. As you all know, most of the time your plots are not all going to grow in the same direction. You have some things growing one way, some things are falling over the other, and together they kind of interlock, I guess you would say. So spreading your seed from all different directions helps to ensure that that seed finds some way to make it to the ground. Now with that being said, we're getting ready for the third step out of the total 4 steps. We're about to start foot crimping. Now I'm not going to show a video unless somebody specifically requests it on how to make one of these. They're pretty straightforward, and there are a few other videos on YouTube that have directions on how to make these. But essentially, I took a 2x4. Ideally, you would like to use a 2x6 and have that 6-inch spacing. But I took a 2x4, made sure I pulled all the screws out of it. Then what I did was I went on Facebook Marketplace and I purchased a metal bed frame, one of the adjustable metal bed frames, and I simply grabbed the grinder, cut one of the bars down to size. I made this a little bit longer than 3 feet. I think it's like 3 foot 4 inches or something like that. And ideally, you would like to have 2 angles on here. You'd like to have one on one side, one on the other. But like I said, I only had a 2x4, and I felt 4-inch spacing was a little too close. Once I cut it down to size, I took a metal drill bit and I drilled 2 holes into the steel, and then I used the drill to go through the wood. And once I did that, obviously I pulled it out. I got some lag bolts. I put some lag bolts through, washers on both sides, and just a regular old nut with a lock washer. And yeah, I just built this morning, and this is going to be the first time we use this. Now the technique with this is pretty straightforward. All right, let me see if I can get far enough away from the camera here. So what you're going to do is you're simply going to place it on the ground and put your foot in it. And you got a rope on here. And you're just going to keep your foot on it. You're going to lift it up, drop it down to 6 inches, and slam your foot down. Pick it up, go another 6 inches, slam your foot down. Pick it up, go another 6 inches, slam your foot down. And that's all we're going to do across this entire field. And by the time we're done, all of this should be laid down nicely. Now as you're doing this, you do want to make sure that you're only dropping in one direction, right? So you're going to see me go down this way, and then I'm going to turn around and come back this way, but they're all falling in line with each other. The problem is if you go, down that way one time and then up across the other, you're going to start laying things down on top of each other, and it's going to make it almost impossible for your seed and your sprouts to come up through that. Okay, so without further ado, let's do some foot crimping. Alright guys, I gotta be honest, I didn't expect this to be nearly as bad. I mean, it's definitely working. It's just, I don't think I got enough in the tank to do it, to be completely honest with you. So, I said I would share my results with you guys, good, bad, or indifferent. So, Foot-Crimper, does it work? Absolutely. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. There's no way I'm getting a whole acre done today. And I bit off a little more than I could chew. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on the Kubota and I'm going to keep going in the same directions, but I'm going to use the Kubota tires to lay it down in one direction, and then I'm going to drive back and forth a couple times going in the opposite direction, and I'm going to hope that it breaks it up the same way a crimper would. I know it's not going to be as good, it's not going to be as effective, but it's better than trying to get this done today and only barely getting this one field done. I still have 4 other ones to do. And it's better than just leaving it standing, because nothing's going to grow. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to drive over it, and then we'll wait a week or so and see if it stands back up. If so, I might just go out and rent a cultipacker that has more pointed, I don't even know what to call them, rings. Something that has more of like a pointed ring on it, or the thinner studded cultipackers. I think that'll do the trick. But I'm gonna try the Kubota idea, and we're gonna see if that works. Little bit of a midday update. Things are not going to plan as typically they do. So let me explain to you what's going on here. Like I said earlier, the Foot-Crimper is not working. Let me rephrase. The Foot-Crimper works. It actually works way better than I even expected it to. The problem is doing it alone, doing an acre today. I mean, this field is half an acre, and it's exhausting. There's no other way to put it. It is just absolutely exhausting to pick up and stomp every 4 to 6 inches or whatever. I mean, I've been at it for, I tried to use it for about an hour and a half, and I only got a few strips done. And I mean, I would be here for days trying to do it that way. Then I tried to use the Kubota. I tried to use the tires to knock it down one way and then go over it the other way. Problem is, I don't know if you could tell, but over here, I believe it's right there in the video, the tires are just tearing up the soil. We've never had a food plot like this before, where it grew nice and thick and fully shaded out the soil, and the soil is basically one step short of mud right now. That's how much moisture is in it, which is awesome. I don't know if the amount of moisture we have is conducive to growing food plots. I know some things will probably grow well in it and others probably won't, but we're just gonna have to work through that. So what I've decided to do now is I'm changing up the process here a little bit, and I'm gonna just leave this how it is, and I'm gonna see what happens. In the meantime, I'm gonna go to the other plots. I'm gonna spread the fertilizer, I'm gonna spread the seed, but I am not gonna knock anything down. And that is because it's just, I don't have the time. It's already 4:30 in the afternoon. I have maybe 3.5, 4 hours left to get the rest of the plots done. So that is my priority, because we have the rain coming. I want to get the fertilizer and I want to get the seed down. I'm going to plant the stuff green, which basically means I'm going to leave the other plots standing, spread everything into it, and then leave. I'm not going to knock anything down. And then what I'm going to do is come back in a few days, maybe this weekend I can get back, or one day next week. I'm going to try to just rent a cultipacker for an afternoon and just run the stuff over one direction to knock it down, go over it the other direction. Similar to what I was trying to do with the Kubota, but I think using a cultipacker, especially the one that has a little bit more of the pointed rings on it. I think that could it could serve the same purpose that a cultipacker, that a crimper would. I'm just gonna have to go over it twice. And something similar to a Packer Max, the Packer Max cultipacker comes to mind, where they kind of come to a point, where each of those rings come to a point. And if I were to knock it down one way, it would all lay down flat, and then I could come over it the other way, and now those points are cutting across those stems, and I think that's going to serve the same purpose. If I get finished around dark, you may see me in a different shirt, because I'm probably going to have to close this video up tomorrow once I get back home and the sun comes back up again. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm learning as I go. I'm no professional. I'm learning a little bit more every year. The food plots are definitely getting better every year, and I'm learning what works and what doesn't. And what's important, and what I tell my students all the time, is that the only mistake you can make in life is not learning from your mistakes. And that goes for this stuff too. So I need to get out and do it. Most importantly is that I'm out here getting this done, right? And as I go, each planting season, I'm going to find more things that work, and I'm going to find some things that I try that don't. And what's important is to make sure I continue doing the things that work. And then when I find something that doesn't work, I make either a mental note of it or I write it down, and I make sure I don't make that same mistake twice. Like I said, I'm going to share all of my information with you guys and all the details and how things worked out, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Unfortunately, the foot crimper, in my opinion, if you're doing a plot that's more than 1/10 of an acre, I would say if you don't have some help and you don't have 3 or 4 guys lined up doing it together, that it's probably not worth it. But that's just me. Let me know what y'all think. All right, so here I am, new clothes. It's Tuesday, the following Tuesday, so we planted 6 days ago. So the beginning of this video, everything up until this point, was filmed 6 days ago, last Wednesday. If you recall, I put down the fertilizer, I put down the seed, and I tried to foot crimp, but that didn't go so well. So I'm back today with the only option I have, and I'm going to weed whack this stuff down. And I'm not going to weed whack it down to the ground. I just want to cut it maybe to 6 inches tall-ish, because I want to get some more sunlight to the ground, and I want to get rid of some of that competition to allow some of that new growth to come in. I'm not going to touch every field, and I'm going to touch on that at the very end of the video when I show some update videos of all the different food plots. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get to work, I'm going to weed whack some of this stuff down, and then I'll get back with you at the end of the video to wrap everything up. Let's do it. So I've just now finished weed whacking the rest of the fields, and it looks pretty good. The barber shop in the back, I left that alone. It just started growing like a week or 2 ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. It really finally took off from the June planting. So I don't want to touch that. I just overseeded into it. We're just going to let that one go. The old cabin here and the old cabin, which is just behind the camera, we whacked them down, and it looks great. The thatch looks pretty good, and like I said earlier, I left everything in the fields, 6 inches to 8 inches tall, and I did that for primarily 3 reasons. The first is we want to make sure that we keep live roots in the ground, and that we don't completely take away food for the deer. We want to make sure that they know that at any time of the day, any time of the year they come here, they're going to find something. The second reason I left it so tall is to help give it shade. Since we didn't lay it over, everything that I cut is going to die and shrink a little and thin down. So I want to make sure that there's still ground cover to help with that shade. The third reason is because we're now 6 days past our planting, and we do have some sprouts and some shoots coming up, which should be playing on the screen now. And I didn't want to accidentally cut off any of those sprouts coming up. So essentially what I did was I used the top of the mature clover as kind of my measurement point. So that way I know that that's the mature clover. So I know for sure none of the sprouts are going to be taller than that. It hasn't even been a week yet. A couple things that I want to point out before I wrap up today. The first is I want to reiterate that this weed whacking was not the number one option. It wasn't the primary thing that we wanted to do. But when our primary didn't work and our secondary, we couldn't figure out a way to make it work, we had to do what we had to do. In the no-till system, we know that we need to have the thatch and we need to have ground cover, okay? And I was committed to carrying that out. And when the first way didn't work and the second way couldn't work and the third way I wasn't going to spray glyphosate, I found a way to get it done. And that's what's most important. You may see one guy doing something one way and another guy doing something another way, and you might see me doing something completely different than what everybody else does. The way I look at it, what's most important is that you're reaching the end goal within the system, right? So the goal here is to have thatch on the ground without spraying anything. Well, guess what? We have thatch on the ground without spraying anything. The only downside is I'm not sure how much of this that I knocked down is actually going to die or terminate. So, you know, we're just going to have to see how that goes, and we're going to have to plan ahead for next year, and I'm going to talk about that in a later video. The last thing I want to touch on here is one of our viewers commented on one of the previous videos, and we were kind of talking back and forth, and we had a really great conversation. And one of the things that he had mentioned was that he's heard that planting grasses with brassicas stops the brassicas from growing. So essentially the grasses grow too high, too tall, too quickly. They shade out and drown out the brassicas, and the brassicas don't grow. As you can see, we have brassicas growing within our grasses everywhere. I mean, honestly, our grass was so thick that I also thought that it took over our fields, simply because it was really, really thick in some places. But as I went through and I started weed whacking today, I started to expose a lot of those brassicas that were growing in unison with the grasses. You know, so we have the kale, we have our turnips. I forget what other brassicas are in the mix. But I'm going to make sure that I give you a list of those seeds in the next video when I show an update. And lastly, the Phacelia that I said earlier in the video didn't grow. I stand corrected. I found a whole lot of it today as I was cutting through the grass. So a lot of our species within our mix grew. Nothing was able to reach maturity because it didn't have enough time, but it all grew, it's all there, it's working through the soil, it's taking up nutrients, it's going to die, it's going to decay, it's going to put those nutrients back into the soil, and that's where we get our system from. That is our slow release fertilizer. As that stuff is decaying, it's helping to feed our plants. So that wraps up our fall planting for 2023. Just to recap, we came in a week ago, we dropped our fertilizer, we dropped our seed, and then we tried to use the Foot-Crimper, which proved to be a little bit more than I could handle. It did work, it just was a lot of work and a lot of time that I just didn't have. So we decided to go over it with the tires, which also proved to not work. It started causing more damage than it was worth. I stopped before I did anything that I couldn't undo. Came in today, now 6 days later, weed whacked everything down, left things standing about 6 to 10 inches tall, and left whatever I cut off as long as I possibly could to help slow down the decay process. The impact has not been put down yet at this time, and we've opted to put that down, say in 3 weeks or so, when these new seeds are actively growing, and we're going to allow those leaves to soak in the nutrients. And at that point, whatever doesn't make it to the leaves is going to hit the soil, and the product's going to help us either way. So that's what we're going to do there. The next episode is most likely going to be the part 2 of the last episode that I posted. So the last episode was about our property now. What does it look like? What characteristics does it have? What features does it have? And what features is it missing? What are some things that we need to get into this property? The Next video, like I said, is going to be like a 10-year plan. What do we want this property to look like in 10 years from now, 8 years, 12 years, whatever it is, when we've done all of the work that we're looking to do, and we can kind of sit back and say, hey, this is great. Because let's face it, that should be our main goal, and everything else falls in it. For example, the no-till system is one piece of that overall plan, and it's got its own parts to it, but it is only just a part of the overall plan. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week on Wing and Tail Outdoors, where success is always just a commitment away. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.